Today, we are taking a look at sources describing one of the most frustrating yet deeply rewarding action games ever made.
Yeah.
Strapping on the dragon sword and preparing for some real suffering because we are diving deep into the 1988 Famicom classic, Ninja Ryukenden.
Or, as you probably yelled at your TV screen back in the late 80s, Ninja Gaiden. This game is, it's a true paradox in gaming history. It's globally famous for two things that are just completely at odds with each other. On one hand, it's so ridiculously, impossibly difficult that it became a cautionary tale.
Oh, yeah.
And on the other, it pioneered this level of emotional, cinematic storytelling that completely changed what players expected from an action game.
And that's our mission for today. To understand how Tecmo managed to fuse this high drama with just punishing controller snapping difficulty. We're going to unpack the revolutionary Tecmo theater approach, and then we're going to dissect the specific design choices, the hyper respawn, the knockback, that cemented this game's status as a brutal pioneer, a true precursor to the modern death game.
Well, before we jump into Ryu Hayabusa's personal hell, let's set the stage a bit. What's fascinating here is that Ninja Ryukenden was actually the second title in Tecmo's experimental Tecmo Theater line. It came right after the soccer game Captain Tsubasa.
So this was an intentional strategy for them.
Absolutely. Their focus was explicitly on integrating these narrative scenes, which they called cinema DISP, right into the gameplay loop. It was a conscious push to elevate the medium beyond just, high scores and platforming.
And just to clear up an early point of confusion,
Yeah.
in 1988, there was another arcade game with the same name.
Right, and our sources really stress this point. It was an entirely separate game, a side-scrolling beat-em-up. It had zero connection to the story, the characters, or the specific timeline of the home console masterpiece we're talking about today.
Okay, so let's unpack that cinematic revolution first, because this is really where the game just changed the landscape overnight. You have to think about the era, 1988. If you were playing an action game, say Castlevania or Mega Man, if you wanted the plot, what did you do?
You paused the game, you picked up the bulky instruction manual, and you read a few pages of probably poorly translated backstory.
Tecmo looked at that and just said, no, we're putting a movie right here between the stages.
Yeah.
And this wasn't just text on a screen. It was a full commitment to visual storytelling that just broke the mold.
It was groundbreaking for the Famicom hardware. Cinema DSP used these realistically drawn, animated, anime-style characters. They were huge on the screen, sometimes nearly screen-filling, instead of relying on the tiny little in-game sprites. This created what the developers called Ryukenden, a real sense of immersion, a feeling that you were there.
And they didn't stop with the art. The technical side of it was shocking. They even had lip-syncing for the dialogue, which for a cartridge game in 1988 felt almost impossible. You were watching a little digital play unfold.
And the text itself, that added to the dramatic tone. They decided to mix traditional kanji characters with the easier-to-read hiragana. That mix of complex characters was really uncommon for Famicom games at the time. Most games kept it simple, but that choice immediately told the player, hey, this is a serious high-stakes drama, not just some kid's cartoon.
So what was this plot that needed so much drama? The story kicks off immediately. Ryu Hayabusa, master ninja of the Dragon Clan, finds a letter from his father, Joe Hayabusa. The letter says he's died in a duel, and it tells Ryu to take the sacred dragon sword to America and find an old friend, Walter Smith.
And this is where the story it goes off the rails from traditional ninja fiction. That simple quest for vengeance spirals so quickly into this complex international conspiracy. Ryu is almost immediately attacked, then shot with a tranquilizer dart by the strange woman, Irene Liu, who then hands him a weird statue and just tells him to run.
The sources really lay out how quickly the stakes escalate. Joe's death isn't just about rival ninjas. It's tied to this world-shattering conflict involving the CIA, who Irene Liu works for, and a sinister cult that worships an ancient demonic evil god, the Jakyu.
It's so dramatic.
Yeah.
But you hit on a key point. Spies, cults, ancient demons. This is profoundly un-ninja-like stuff for the time. It's blending traditional mythology with, a global espionage thriller.
And here's the really smart design choice, connecting the story to the difficulty. Because let's be honest, you will be playing these stages over and over again.
Oh, you will.
While the demo scenes are long, you could skip them entirely.
And that is such a critical feature. It means the cinematics build that immersion on your first run. They make you care about Ryu. but they don't become an obstacle when you're trying to master a brutally difficult stage for the 100th time. The emotional investment had to be there before the game started demanding, absolute perfection from you.
Speaking of demanding perfection, let's shift to Ryu's toolkit and the core mechanics. Mastery here meant leveraging every single thing you had. Ryu has his primary dragon sword, but he also relies on ninjutsu, which uses an energy system you can see at the top of the screen.
His ninjutsu included your standard projectiles, like a shuriken, but the game gets really interesting with the powerful, consumable special moves like the spinning slash or Kaiten, which gave you great diagonal coverage, and of course, the temporary invincibility, the fire wheel dance, or Kaiten no Mai.
And these items weren't just randomly placed, were they?
No, not at all. They were strategic breadcrumbs. Tecmo would often place them directly before a major obstacle, a tough enemy formation, or a tricky vertical climb. They were basically telling you, use your resources here, you're gonna need them.
But the Kaiten no Mai, that invincibility item, it came with a serious tactical cost. Our sources highlight that because it occupied the standard ninjutsu slot, if you picked it up, it just automatically overwrote and removed anything else you were holding.
Right, so you couldn't be invincible and keep your powerful spinning slash for the boss that's just around the corner. It forces this constant cost-benefit analysis, which adds a lot of depth.
But the true signature movement, the one every single player remembers, has to be the wall mechanics. It just defined the game's verticality.
Absolutely. The ability to cling to walls, which was a huge innovation, and perform that famous wall kick multi-jump. You'd press the A button and the D-pad in the opposite direction of the wall. It was essential for getting anywhere. You couldn't beat the game without mastering it.
And of course, the community found ways to break it.
Well, of course. There was a tricky, almost glitch-like technique. With precise aerial control, really skilled players could repeatedly stick and kick off a single wall face, which let them climb in places the developers probably never intended. That kind of emergent mastery became part of the game's whole cult appeal.
The high difficulty and the core gameplay are inseparable from the sound and the atmosphere. The BGM and graphics were so highly praised for just cranking up that dramatic tension. I have to specifically call out the Stage 4-2 music.
The iconic track. It was so popular, even though it was originally unnamed in the game files, that it was later officially dubbed Senretsu no Ryu, or Ryu's Fierceness.
And the timing on it was perfect.
Perfect cinematic timing. It starts immediately after the cutscene where Ryu is overlooking the enemy's ancient ruins from a cliff. That musical cue paired with that sweeping view, it created this lasting emotional punch. It just proves they really understood the power of sequencing music and image.
Okay, we have to talk about the elephant in the room now. The difficulty. We keep using words like brutal and punishing. This game went way beyond just being hard. In the Japanese gaming scene, it was often described as kichiku level, a term that translates to something like devilish or even cruel.
And if we connect that to the big picture, it explains why people see it as a definitive precursor to modern death games like Dark Souls or Cuphead. Progress wasn't about raw reaction time on your first try. It was all about rote memorization of enemy patterns, precise level layouts, and just pure execution. The game's unofficial motto was, if you died, you learned a lesson about a pixel-perfect jump or an enemy spawn point.
And those lessons were taught with incredible aggression. Let's dive into the specifics of this brutal design, because these choices weren't accidental. This was calculated cruelty. First, damage recovery time was extremely brief. You get hit, you flicker for less than a second, and then you can be hit again almost immediately.
Which was made so much worse by the notorious crippling knockback. The moment you took damage, you were sent flying backwards. And that severe knockback almost always resulted in a guaranteed instant death by falling into a pit.
The knockback into a hole trap.
It became the signature pain point of the whole trilogy. It was in nearly every stage from stage 2 onward. It felt less like a challenge and more like the game was just cheating you.
It got worse too if you were near a wall. There was this glitch-like flaw where if you were knocked back into a ladder or a wall, the game could register you as clinging while you were still in the damage animation. And that led to these inescapable damage traps where you couldn't move or fight back.
And then there's the hyper respawn. That's what really drove players crazy. Enemies would regenerate with just a tiny shift in screen position. Sometimes, literally one dot of movement was enough to reset a spawn point. This led to what players called an infinite hell in some corridors, unless you learned the exact scrolling speed to just run past all of them. You couldn't stop to fight, because they just keep coming.
And you simply cannot talk about this game's difficulty without mentioning the birds.
Ugh, the birds.
That flying enemy, often appearing in pairs, usually right over the edge of a pit, universally cited as the strongest common enemy in the game. It deals maximum damage, 3 points per hit, which is just devastating when combined with that knockback.
They were so harsh, in fact, that Tecmo basically admitted it was cruel. They reduced the bird's damage to just 1 point in all the sequels. They were the ultimate trap setter in the original.
And to add insult to injury, whenever Ryu was clinging to those walls or ladders, he was completely vulnerable. He couldn't use his sword or his ninjutsu. He was a sitting duck for those newly spawned high-damage birds we just mentioned. You were completely dependent on timing and platforming, with zero defensive options.
So this raises the big question, why? Why was the difficulty calibrated this high? If the game was so prone to instant, unfair death, how did anyone stomach it?
I think the answer is in the design balance. The game defaulted to unlimited continues.
Exactly. This meant that while the challenge was intensely frustrating, the barrier to replaying was zero. The difficulty was a deliberate, defining feature, a rite of passage. But the unlimited continues allowed for the trial and error you needed for memorization. They wanted you to suffer, but they didn't want you to give up for good.
However, that balance was thrown completely out the window for the ultimate test, the final gauntlet in Stage 6-4.
This was it. The true, infamous breaking point for millions of players. You faced a notorious 3-part final boss rush against the evil mastermind Jakyo, and, finally, the evil god's final form.
And the penalty for failure here was legendary. It was a move so cruel it felt personal. If you died at any point during this final 3-boss stretch, even with lives left, you were sent all the way back. Not to the start of the boss rush, to the start of Stage 6-1, bypassing all checkpoints. After hours of grinding, being thrown back to 6-1 was designed to destroy controllers.
It's the ultimate expression of the game's philosophy, right? Unlimited continues until the very end, and then suddenly, no continues. The game wants you to prove you've achieved total mastery under pressure.
And it was compounded by resource draining. Between each of those 3 final battles, the score gets tallied, and they take all of your ninjutsu away. Your energy bar is reset to 0.
Which means you had to fight the second and third bosses completely without any special attacks, relying only on your sword skill and your platforming.
What's fascinating is how the game even admitted how cruel it was. The Stage 5 boss, before he dies, he warns Ryu that going further means knowing the hell of this world, a line that, for players in 1989, applied way more to the gameplay than to the actual plot.
It's true, the gameplay delivered on that promise of hell, but even here, there was a glimmer of hope if you knew the secrets. The spinning slash ninjutsu, the Gaiden Great, was the secret weapon. It had this enormous hidden attack power.
Yes, the sources confirmed that if you timed it right, you could hit a boss repeatedly with it, dealing all 16 health bars of damage and just instantly defeating them. The trick was getting it there, because using your sword during a jump automatically used the ninjutsu for the spinning slash.
But the community found the exploit. Pressing down and B during a jump let Ryu do a normal sword attack instead. Mastering that let expert players save that instant kill weapon for the most desperate moments of that boss rush, which made that final stretch finally achievable. It was a secret reward for deep, deep engagement.
And the hero of this journey, Ryu Hayabusa, went on to have a huge legacy. He became a popular fighter in Tecmo's Dead or Alive series, and of course starred in the critically acclaimed 3D Ninja Gaiden reboot in 2004. He's an icon.
And the series timeline itself is a bit of a puzzle. The sequels 2 and 3 followed the original, but the Game Boy version is actually set 3 years before the first Famicom game, and the OVA is set after 2. But the original Ninja Ryukenden truly set the foundation, the kinetic platforming, the deep story, and the punishing difficulty that the whole franchise was built on for decades.
So what does this all mean? I think this deep dive shows us a game that achieved this perfect, explosive fusion of compelling, groundbreaking cinematic storytelling with ruthlessly demanding action design. Fans of this game, the ones who survive the knockback and the birds, they appreciate the immense, almost unparalleled satisfaction that comes from finally mastering its brutality. It teaches you execution and patience.
And the legacy went beyond just the mechanics of suffering. The game established these visual and emotional traditions that carried through the whole trilogy and into the modern 3D series. Ryu always looking over the enemy HQ from a cliff, the lone hero preparing to descend into hell, and most importantly, that final shot of Ryu and his companion, Irene, watching the sunrise or sunset.
It's that consistent return to a human connection, a visual payoff. It reminds you that every moment of frustration, every time you were sent back to stage 6-1, it was worth it for that single earned moment of peace. It teaches you that great challenge demands a great reward, even if that reward is just seeing the sun come up after a long, dark night.
And that raises a fascinating question for you to think about. In modern gaming, where accessibility is often key, have we lost something essential when games dial back that truly Kichiku-level difficulty? Is the satisfaction of mastery really possible without the threat of total soul-crushing failure, like being sent back to the start of 6-1? That's what Ninja Ryukenden made us earn.